Well, it is that time of the week again for Sterlo's wrap-up. What a round two it was. The man himself is alongside me. Peter Sterling, good to see you.
And you, James. 5 teams unbeaten after 2 rounds. A couple of surprise packets up there. So it's been a wonderful fortnight to kick us off.
Just don't know what you're going to get at the moment. Look, let's wind the clock back to Thursday night, the local derby. The Dragons now 2 from 2. The Sharks 0-2 after that 2016 result. The first half, though, they were down 14-0 at one stage, the Dragons, but you believe it was the first 40 that probably decided the match for them.
Yeah, well, the Sharks had a gale behind them, and it was a little bit like the Parramatta-Penrith game the week before, where Parramatta had everything going for them, but they didn't have a big lead at half-time. I thought that the Sharks should have led by more at the break, but we saw too much of this kind of formation, which to me got a little bit predictable, and it was read quite well by the opposition defence. And I don't think that formation actually works well for Matt Moylan. He's more an instinctive player, so I'm keen to find out what Shane Flanagan does with his attack and Matt Moylan in weeks to come. But once St George Illawarra got some possession and they were close enough, then they went on with it pretty strong in the second half. Everybody contributed, but probably best personified by Ewan Aitken. He had an 8-minute spell in the second half where he comes up with a really strong effort to stop Josh Dugan scoring in the corner. We know he's a strong defender, but Josh Dugan's a big man and would score on most occasions in this situation. Then he went down the other end, scored a try getting on the outside of Ricky Latelli to get them really on a roll, and he backed that up with a chase on Sasai Feki and showed good speed to do so. So they had a lot of contributors, but Ewan Aitken just kind of showed the mindset of the St George Illawarra side at the moment.
How concerned would you be as a Sharks fan about this fullback conundrum? The fact that you have got Matt Moylan, Josh Dugan and Valentine Holmes all there. Holmes went to the wing, seemed disinterested. Does it stay as it is?
Oh, look, I'm not. Look, I don't know about disinterested, but he didn't have much involvement, so that didn't augur well at all. And look, I was surprised that after 80 minutes of football, Shane Flanagan made the change that he did, and said that he made the change because with young Katoa getting injured, he needed a winger, and Valentine Holmes went on the wing. Well, he brought Aaron Gray up. Aaron Gray is a specialist winger. He's played twice as many games on the flank than he has in the centre, so I couldn't quite get my head around that. But what has surprised me that early on in the season, after a full off-season together, a change was made positionally after just 80 minutes of football.
It's a good point. The early kick-off on Friday saw the Bulldogs suffer consecutive losses to start the year, 30 points to 12, beaten by a Roosters side who are now off the mark. And Luke Keary, he was welcome back, and he was welcome back in style too, wasn't he?
It was like there was a missing piece for the jigsaw puzzle, and they found that piece, and it just happened to be in the form of Luke Keary. All of a sudden, the combination between Cooper Cronk and James Tedesco looked better. Keary had a great game, first game back from that broken jaw that he sustained in training.
He's quick.
Look, he's got it all going for him. He was just about the buy of the year last year, and all of a sudden it just looked complete. And I'm sure Trent Robertson was delighted with the performance after the disappointment of round one. Speaking of disappointment, the Canterbury Bulldogs now have conceded at least 30 points in their opening 2 games. Now, it was always going to take time for the Bulldogs to put everything into place. New coach, new board off the park, positional changes, Aaron Woods and Kieran Foran coming in, so new men in key positions. But defensively, that's what you've got to base your campaign on. So there's some problems there. I thought they got a pretty dud call. I know about a dud call. I thought a harsh call. Now, we've seen great consistency when it comes to the player receiving the football behind one of their support players. If they catch the ball on the inside shoulder, then straight away they're pulling it up. If it's caught on the outside shoulder, it's play on. But I was under the impression that depth was something that should be considered. And if you have a look at that, I thought that there was enough depth where the man was catching the football in regards to where the defence was, that the defence wasn't put out and they could react to it. Montoya scores in the corner. They were 10 behind at that stage.
Yeah.
That was a real turning point. Technically, the right call. I still thought it was a harsh one.
The Roosters, one team to silence some critics out there. The Broncos, the other in the later game on Friday. 46,000 fans there to see them take on the Cowboys in another great Queensland derby, 24 points to 20. And Anthony Milford, the halves, he and Cody Nikorima, despite winning 10 of 12 together last year when they were 6 and 7, he had an absolute beauty of a game. And this was probably a key turning point. The Jordan Kahu collection off a short drop there.
Well, it was all the North Queensland side early in the game. They scored the first try. They led by 8. And that short play for Kahu turned the momentum, and that's not easy to do. One of the hardest things in the game is to actually stop that. But it allowed McCulloch and Milford to introduce their running games. They look much more fluent with Andrew McCulloch starting the game in the dummy half position, and all of a sudden this man, Anthony Milford, was given space to move in. And Nicarima as well. You know, the 6 and the 7 were much better this week, but I think a lot of it came out of the dummy half work. And then when they got on a roll, North Queensland, they looked like they were, you know, well on top. But this, Brisbane, this North Queensland side never go away. They somehow Jonathan Thurston got them back into the game. In fact, they should have won the game. That there, Scott Bolton scores under the post if he doesn't hit the upright. But I've got to give Pangai Jr. plenty of raps for that as well. He came across from the inside. He actually put him into the post. Yep. But Jonathan Thurston nearly manufactured a remarkable victory again. They show great patience. They show great confidence in what they have to offer late in a game. Like if you turned it on, you wouldn't know whether they were in front or behind. So a wonderful game from two clubs now that we just expect. I think it's something like the last 10 matches between them. 6 points has been the biggest margin and 4 golden points in there as well. It's just developed into one of the games of the season, no matter where it is on the calendar.
They keep producing. Look, we saw the Warriors in the early game on Saturday go back-to-back to start the year, 20 points to 8, this time against the Gold Coast Titans. Great to see some of their stars that have been there for a while really able to step up, whether it be Shaun Johnson or Roger Tuivasa-Sheck at the back.
Look, I want to get excited, but I still have some reserve. You know,
bogey team.
They've beaten 2 teams that didn't play finals football last year, but there's some really positive signs. And Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was clearly, head and shoulders, the best player on the field. This is the young man that the Warriors poached from the Tricolours. And who had a disappointing season first up for the Warriors. But now, all of a sudden, the 1, 6, 7 and 9 are looking fantastic. Isaac Luke is back to his South Sydney Premiership winning days. Blake Green has certainly had a profound influence on them as well. Tuivasa-Sheck, outstanding. Shaun Johnson looking great. But, you know, they've got to play that type of football successfully against the better teams in the competition to give us a full indication of just where they're going to be. Tohu Harris, outstanding on the right-hand side, so he's had an influence. But Blake Green, to me, is the man that has come in and settled things down when they need something to sort of just get back from the flamboyant type of play that they're producing. All of a sudden, Blake Green, and it's generally with an inside pass, straightens their attack up and just gets that little bit of control back into the game when needed. I know this doesn't look much, but it's important to the Warriors, you know, because they love to throw the football around, but at times, this is the kind of play that you need just to get the ball forward, just to get everybody back into formation. And Blake Green, very, very good for them in that department. But they're playing some attractive football, and it's entertaining, and it's been very, very effective. I just want to see them do it against a side that are going to play finals football.
Another team to go back-to-back to start the year, the Panthers, at Panthers Stadium for consecutive games too, in the heat again. But something else they did similar to the week before, a 14-point deficit, overcome again against South Sydney to win it 18-14. So all the bunnies in the first half. It's not a habit you want to get into, Pete, but tell you what, it's working for them at the moment. Even the late injection of Tyrone Peachey also helping along the way.
Yeah, Coach Anthony Griffin was quite complimentary about his team and the fact that they didn't panic and they maintained the game plan despite the scoreline being against them. And it was a really good second half performance from them, as you point out. Very, very similar to what they did against Parramatta. Trent Merrin got them going with a great effort to get the ball over his head. But Nathan Cleary, he took control in the second half, and you know, he's got an arsenal to work with, some real attacking ability in this side. Tyrone Peachey scores the match winner there. He was only introduced into the game with 18 minutes to go. It might be a role that he'll need to get used to playing because Dean Farray he has a real confidence behind him in regards to being a starting member of that side. Anthony Griffin, he's very well looked upon up there. So Tyrone Peachey all of a sudden kind of looks to be the odd man out, but he's a real threat coming off the bench. And as I say, with 20 to go, all of a sudden his introduction turned things around and he scored the match winner.
They've got to enjoy him while they got him too, because he's off to the Titans at season's end as well.
Yeah, the only, I suppose, unsavoury part to come out of this day, and Penrith have reacted to it very quickly, Greg Inglis was allegedly the target of some racial vilification from a fan. Penrith straight on the front foot about that. They said that they will track down and find out who the culprit or culprits were. If they are Penrith fans, then Brian Fletcher has said that he would be looking for a life ban. So we don't need that in our game. We have very little of it now. But good that Penrith have reacted and got on the front foot straight away, and we don't need those kind of people coming along to our games.
Copped a knock too, concussion as well, so big question mark over him for this week too. So.
Yeah, you know, any time South Sydney lose Greg Inglis during the course of a game, it's derogatory to their chances, and nice to see him back. Let's hope he will be back again next week after that knock.
The later game on Saturday night, it was meant to be a celebration of Billy Slater's 300th match. Pete, 10 points to 8 for the second consecutive week that the Tigers have won by that margin and caused an upset in the process.
And deservedly so. Such a resilient performance. Same scoreline as the week before. They had a man in the bin as well. It was like a thriller, this game. And the final chapter was magnificent. After Melbourne went to the front for the first time at 8-6, this was the restart. So Sam Cassiano is caught in goal. So it turns back towards the Tigers. But brilliance here from Cameron Smith with the short restart. Vunivalu catches that, and then all of a sudden they're off the hook, the Melbourne Storm, and you think with up against 12 men, they're going to go on and win this game. And you thought more so at the end of that set of 6. Addo Carr dives across in the corner. There was a forward pass ruled against Melbourne, and that gave an opportunity for the West Tigers at the other end to come up with a mistake here from Vunivalu. That was the biggest error of the night, and shortly after, Madalino throws the ball to Luke Brooks to score a try right at the end of this game, as they did a week before. That was converted. You can see the joy there. They still had to defend another set from the restart, but as I say, it was like this thriller where you're not quite sure whether the underdog is going to be the hero in it. Great final chapter to it, and as it turned out, the West Tigers, great performance from them. And I thought it was really fitting that Ben Madalino, who was the man put into the bin for 10 minutes, came on and threw basically the winning pass.
Handy buy. Benji Marshall, he's playing in the starting side, but Josh Reynolds is spectator at the moment. What do they do when he comes back? Because Benji seems very much at home.
Well, you don't change it, that's for sure. You know, Josh Reynolds would be looking, if he was available for selection this week, he'd be coming off the bench. And Benji Marshall now, playing confident football, has got it in his head, well, if I do this every week, I'm the number 6 for the season at the West Tigers. So what a great position for them to be in. You know, big off-season signing, Josh Reynolds. To think that he might not be in the starting side is a good sign of how they're going. But great start. Defensively, they're just working so hard for each other. Ivan Cleary has got them playing a really up-tempo style of football. And Melbourne, they got beaten on their merits. Disappointment, obviously, 300 games for Billy Slater. And when Craig Bellamy was interviewed after this game, you could see the biggest hurt for him was the fact that in Billy's 300th game, and it was 100 games for Kenny Bromwich as well, so a couple of milestones there, he thought that his side didn't start with the intent that those players deserved. So he was bitterly disappointed with the performance, but especially that there just wasn't the motivation there early on for such a big game internally.
Sunday afternoon, Lottoland the scene. This would have hurt for you to watch.
We'd get here eventually.
The Seagulls 54, the Eels 0. Pete, where does this rank amongst Eels defeats in the history of their club?
Oh, look, I think I was in a side that got beaten 64-12, so I'm not going to sit here and, you know, preach. But the worst thing that you can accuse of a team and players is that they didn't have a go. Now, that's the quote from Brad Arthur after the game. He said they did not have a go. And that's the biggest concern. And to me, it's a continuation of what we saw in the second 40 minutes against Penrith, where I didn't see a lot of fight. Now, when things are going against you, you've got to dig in. You know, and even I'm watching this game and I'm thinking at 12-18-0, they'll come back. And Cameron King nearly got over the try line, so too Jarryd Hayne, and maybe that might have been the catalyst for something. But overall, it was such a poor performance that lacked the competitive streak that you need to do well in this competition. They gave up early on, and I hate saying that, and it's a harsh thing to say, but they weren't in for the fight, and that's a really bad sign.
Do they reshuffle now for a match against the Sharks this weekend, another team that is 0-2? How can you revitalise a team that conceded 24 unanswered points against the Panthers one week and then 54 the following? Well,
they have to look internally, and they have to, I said earlier, they look in the mirror and work out whether they're happy with what they see. You know, This is a side that finished top 4 last year, strengthened off-season with a couple of strong recruits that came in with such high expectations. Now, we're only in round 2, but I haven't liked what I've seen in the first 2 weeks. And the season can get away on you. You don't want to put yourself in a position that the second half of the year that you've got to make a long run just to make finals football. They're sitting on the bottom of the ladder. So, Brad Arthur's got some work to do, but the players just need to have a look at their preparations, at their effort last week, and come out against Cronulla this Saturday night, another team that's sitting 0-2 as well. And the good thing that you can do in this game is that you can make up for something in a short period of time. So if they can come out and have a good performance and a victory on Saturday night, all of a sudden we forget a little bit about the Manly performance. At the moment it hurts and it needs to. There are no excuses from what we saw from Parramatta yesterday.
The round finished with the Raiders and Knights in Canberra and Newcastle. 2 from 2 to start 2018. And Mitchell Pearce and Kalen Ponga, 2 of the 9 off-season recruits, starring yet again.
Well, we waxed lyrical about the Brisbane-North Queensland game. This was worth waiting for. This was a seesawing affair. Wonderful game to watch. And yes, it was Kalen Ponga who, to me, stood out. A lot of really good contributions across the park. I thought for Canberra, the beaten side, Whitehead was great. Blake Austin was very, very good. For Newcastle to be successful, they need contributions all round. But this young Ponga, we spoke about his performance last week. We know how dangerous he is with the football. But defensively, he's come up really well. And his ball playing is something that I hadn't seen. Like that's a halfback's pass there, going to the line, attracting the opposition player in Sam Williams to come in and get involved and opening up for the outside man. Every time he touched the football, he was dangerous. And look, he's a star. That's another wonderful pass there to Tautai Moga. It was just a great game of footy. If you're a neutral observer, wonderful to watch. If you're Canberra, you're concerned again because in the past couple of seasons, close losses have counted against them. That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. It's 20 all. They put a kick through and Kalen Ponga picks it up at pace off his bootlaces. So it's all positive for Newcastle at the moment. Great start for them. For Canberra, they've been in a winning position 2 weeks in a row. And there is a sort of a belief around that if you sort of divide your season up, you win 8 games, maybe budget to lose 8 games. It's the other 8 games that determine what season you have. Now, they've lost 2 games. They led one of them 18-0, and they led late into this one, and they haven't got the money. They've got to start winning those kind of matches.
All right, times are tough for Ricky Stewart and his Raiders in the nation's capital at the moment, and a little bit for you too, Peter Sterling, at the moment. Better luck next week with the...
I'm going to throw rugby league. A lot changes in a week.
Yes,
James,
true.
let's hope it does for some clubs. For other clubs, let's hope they continue on with their great start.
Spot on. Thank you very much, Sterlo.
Cheers,
Sterlo's wrap-up after round 2 of the National Rugby League. Make sure you do join us tonight. 100% footy. It is back on Channel 9. Fireworks aplenty, no doubt, after another big round in the National Rugby League. We'll see you then.